heard it here first. Bitcoin is going to zero. Zero. When it comes out, zero.
Bitcoin is an asset class. And that's a major revolution. If Fidelity and Blackrock and if 10 other ETF issuers all agree that Bitcoin is an asset class, right, it should be 10x to 100x bigger than it is right now.
Remember when we told you BlackRock had bought like 11,500 Bitcoin and that it was just the beginning? Well, we were right. And don't forget, there were 10 other ETF issuers. And it is looking like Michael Saylor's 10 to 100x prediction is becoming more and more prophetic. Guys, if you got Bitcoin on exchanges or you don't have Bitcoin, you might want to scoop some up because the supply is being ate up in a hurry. Check this out. The top 10 ETFs, excluding GBTC, bought 34,589 Bitcoin so far. Again, we're just getting started. Ladies and gentlemen, we're not fucking selling. The HODL Waves chart shows the amount of Bitcoin held for different periods of time. Long-term holders, see blue arrows, 1 year plus and 6 months plus, have not sold any Bitcoin to Larry Fink or the other ETF issuers because that isn't the revolution. I'm with Samson Mao. Those of you that are not bullish yet might want to get that cranium checked. Samson here. I hate to say this, but there are a good number of Bitcoiners out there that don't understand exponential growth, just like pizza ladies don't understand fractions. Ladies and gentlemen, it looks like institutional FOMO is beginning to meet a supply shock. The halving is imminent. We got a lot of bullish news to cover. Let's get it. Only are the ETF issuers eating up all the Bitcoin. It looks like Larry Fink and BlackRock will be passing up GigaChad and MicroStrategy very soon. Let's get into this article. BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF growth challenges MicroStrategy, heralding a shift in digital currency investment. BlackRock and Fidelity's Bitcoin investments signify TradFi's growing crypto interest. Throw those shitcoins in the trash. There's only one crypto asset. It's Bitcoin. Anything else? Likely a scam, but here we go. With BlackRock's rise, the race for Bitcoin supremacy marks a shift towards mainstream Bitcoin acceptance. Okay, and let's see from the current dynamics, the current rate of which BlackRock is acquiring Bitcoin. How long will it take them to pass up Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy? Well, according to Luke Broyles, by February 1st. You understand what this means? Absolute scarcity. What happens when there's no more Bitcoin on exchanges and the hodlers aren't selling, but there's institutional and nation state demand? Number go up, baby. All right, I thought this was really cool. So this is bitcointreasuries.net. So let's go ahead and take a look at that yellow line over here, okay? That is the rate of Bitcoin being added to treasuries. It is growing exponentially, and that is from, looks like just before January 2024, so beginning in December, November, we can see a major shift, and this is in the view of Bitcoin as a treasury reserve asset, as Michael Saylor has called for a long time. These are the type of things that lead Bitcoin to 10 to 100x from here. Okay, now check out this list. These are some of the biggest Bitcoin whales in the game with wallets known. So we have MicroStrategy, Marathon, Tesla, Coinbase, Hut 8, Block, Riot, Galaxy, Bitcoin Group SE, CleanSpark, and we will put the rest of this list down in the show notes. So be sure to check that out. And remember, there's only 21 million Bitcoin. And another thing about this, right? The perfect storm building for Bitcoin, the other factors, including BRICS, de-dollarization, inflation rearing its ugly head again. And this is part of these cycles, okay? Weimar Cycles, go ahead and check that out. When Money Dies, excellent book, and it'll really break it down and show just that rate of change that people were experiencing on the ground in Weimar, Germany at that time. But one of my favorite macro analysts, Lynn Alden, was on Peter McCormack's What Bitcoin Did recently and dove into this as well. How good are governments at maintaining their fiat bubble against the constant push of Bitcoin? Well, if you ask me, it's kind of gradually then suddenly type thing. But whether you look at it as a very, very large monetary asset globally or virtually the only one, I have pretty high ambitions for what Bitcoin can do. Let's check out Lynn Alden.
Do you put a percentage chance on hyper-Bitcoinization?
I think there's a range of outcomes. So I don't have a firm view on the very long-term end game. Basically, money is a competitive good that scales with network effects, and it's one of those things you really want to hold the second best money. You generally want to gravitate towards the first. In historical periods where there's been two monies coexisting for a long time, it's usually because one money is not sufficient. So for example, gold and silver coexisted because gold, even one tiny gold coin was more than like a laborer would make in a day or a week maybe. And so you'd have to have the smaller units. And so there's certain contexts like that where it can kind of reach its limitations. I think a big thing will come down to how good are governments at maintaining their own little fiat bubble against the constant push of Bitcoin. Right? We see, for example, developing countries that have inflation problems, they have the constant pressure of dollarization always kind of knocking on their door to kind of push in. And people there in those gray markets, they want dollars. And so, but they've been able to maintain their monopolies anyway because of the technology that's available. They can basically firewall their banks and they can firewall their ports of entry. Bitcoin and stablecoins start to pierce into that. And so you'd expect that over time, as liquidity and acceptance and knowledge of these types of technologies grow, particularly Bitcoin, it can pierce into all these things. And it's increasingly hard to maintain any sort of currency monopoly. But we still don't know the extent that they'll be completely dismantled from being able to do that, or what timeline if it does happen. So whether you look at it as a very, very large monetary asset globally, or virtually the only one, I don't really have a strong view. I think that's all still quite a bit out. But I have pretty high ambitions for what Bitcoin can do.
And contrary to what the IMF chief said today about Bitcoin being no threat to the dollar or fiat money or currency, that it's an asset and it can't be money, well, this just in. Bitcoin and crypto could significantly reduce US dollar dominance, and that's from Morgan Stanley. Go yourself, IMF. Another thing I saw is they were talking about Bitcoin and CBDCs will eradicate the dollar. What I don't like is that they put Bitcoin in the same category when it is the antithesis of a CBDC. Bitcoin is incapable of being a system of control. It is open and immutable. Anyone in the world can use it, whereas a CBDC is behavioral economics enforced onto the populace by the state. And if you look at the record of the past 3 years, I don't know if the state really knows jack shit about what they're doing. And to break down Bitcoin versus CBDCs, here is one of the great Bitcoiners of all time. We have Andreas Antonopoulos in 2016 with the great Joe Rogan. Check this out.
The problem is we are going to a digital currency society where cash will be gradually eradicated, either through non-use, or a lot of countries and a lot of governments are trying to actively ban it. So they're putting limits on how much you can use cash. When we go to the society, we have to really think about the implications. Do we want a society in which our digital money is under complete surveillance and complete control, where if you go to the wrong protest, or if you support the wrong political campaign, or if you make a payment to the wrong person or receive money from the wrong person, suddenly your money disappears. It's no longer yours anymore. It's frozen, it's seized, it's gone. And someone has control of that. Corporations, banks, governments, and in most cases, there is no difference between corporation, bank, and government, right? And so that's one scenario. And the other scenario is one in which individuals control their money. And it is digital money, but it's digital cash like Bitcoin, where you can pay an individual from one person to another, just like I can with cash today, without any other party getting involved. What really strikes me as amazing is that we've gotten used to this idea so quickly, which is that we no longer pay people. We no longer pay people directly. The less we use cash, the more we pay people through a corporation, right? So from tipping your valet to tipping your taxi driver to tipping wherever, tipping is pretty much the last remaining part of our society where cash is used to pay from one person who is not an incorporated entity to another person who is not an incorporated entity. Everything else you have to pay through a corporation, whether it's a bank, whether it's Venmo, whether it's PayPal, whether it's any of those things. And we've gradually gotten used to this environment where we can't pay another person unless there's a corporation involved. And that's astonishing to me. And as cash disappears, that then becomes a final fact that every single payment in your life will be from you to a corporation.
And that corporation takes a piece of that, every single thing.
And not just that, it doesn't just take a piece, it also controls and surveils and monitors your use. And if you violate the terms and conditions, you are destitute.
And if you watched our last episode, we had Larry Fink talk about Bitcoin being basically the safe haven if you're fearful of your government debasing your money or authoritarian regimes. And this is from Larry Fink. He was echoing exactly what Jack Mallers is saying right here. 8 billion people, all of us, everybody is subject to fiat currency. That's devaluing.
Bitcoin has been seen basically as, well, an asset to be able to bet on. Ultimately, whether or not it's a store of value, it's certainly been one that people have been wanting to gain exposure to see it as volatile, to see the gains. But elsewhere in the world, they do use it as a way of also ultimately being able to transact, to use it as some sort of currency. Now, when does that potentially start to seep into the US? Because at the moment, we've seen the validity of it as an asset, as a store of value, but not as a currency here in the United States.
I'm not, to be honest, guys, I'm not sure it totally matters. So for example, I don't own any dollars anymore. I'm sick of them. You know, I think the real risk is owning dollars because all they do is go down. And traditionally, the game was, well, shoot, what do I own? The government's going to keep printing currency. They're in so much debt. Do I try and own a house? Do I try and own an index of stocks? Do I try and find out what Jeff Bezos is up to now that he's not the CEO of Amazon? And Bitcoin is the most accessible, most simple, best expression of this problem that, you know, Ed, how many people in the world have to deal with fiat debasement? Give me a number. What do you think?
You answer that, Jack.
8 billion, all of us. Everybody is subject to a fiat currency that's devaluing, and everyone has access to this thing. And so if you want to use it for payments, if you want to store it, so for example, I live on credit cards. The US banking system gives me a 30-day revolving door of credit where I could spend dollars without needing to own those pieces of trash. And so I just sit in Bitcoin all day. I spend on credit. And so to me, I don't know. Anyway, does that answer your question? I think Jack, it doesn't totally matter.
And everyone will have to come around eventually. Some, you know, they'll have to learn the hard way. Vanguard will be buying Bitcoin at $1 million. So let me get this straight. Vanguard allows you to buy 3x leverage ETFs and 0 days to expiry options. Both risky as fuck, but not a spot Bitcoin ETF. Or even gold. Yep, that's right. Channel your inner Neo. Be ungovernable. Go f yourself. If you want Larry and Blackrock and the rest of these ETF issuers to pump your bags, the real key is running the exchanges. Get all your Bitcoin off the exchange and into self-custody. That prevents the paper-handed pansies from playing their little games. Hey, if you're looking to get started in Bitcoin or you want to take your setup to the next level, we got just the guys to get you covered. Play Bitcoin Originals are powered by the Bitcoin Way, and as your dedicated Bitcoin IT team, the Bitcoin Way is here to guide you from start to finish on your journey to properly self-custody your Bitcoin. What's more, they've recently introduced 100% focused collaborative custody services where you'll benefit from advanced multi-sig security, inheritance planning, and much more while remaining 100% in control. Looking to get started? Schedule a free 30-minute call using that link below. Guys, ignore the short term. We know where things are going. Supply shock plus demand shock equals price shock. And you better stack them while you can. Man, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Be sure to like, subscribe, share that Sound Money Gospel. Be sure to follow us on Twitter where we're getting all the latest breaking news. Set those notifications. Empower yourself by digesting all of Simply Bitcoin's content. Keep tuning in and we will be your guide through the peaceful Bitcoin revolution. Until next time, guys. Peace.
If you prefer to go down with the ship, fuck you.